Everybody, I'm Dr. Karen Makowski. I'm a leading investigator on any of my parapsychology or paranormal investigations. Welcome. So today I'm going to be discussing this cold case CCMP02. This is the case I call my Missing Florida Girls. I'm going to discuss my case because I actually did this case, I worked on this case on the 26th of February 2020. And there is an update, obviously. During this video there'll be an update to this case too. Now obviously when I was connected to these victims, these young women, it looked like it was in the 1970s, early 80s, obviously because of what one of the young ladies was wearing. And I remember there was a strong connection to Jacksonville. I kept hearing Jacksonville. I don't know if there was something about Jacksonville. I feel like there was a lot of young women going missing in Jacksonville, but they were sort of classed as runaways, so they weren't really looked into properly. They were not runaways at all. They were actually kidnapped and murdered. Definitely a serial killer back then. And so I'm going to discuss this. I'm going to discuss what my findings were because I kept hearing Jacksonville a lot. I actually submitted the report not so long after this. I think it was like a week later. I actually submitted this data report to Jacksonville Police Department back then in February. Oh no, I probably like late February, early March 2020. That's when I distributed the data report to them. So I connected to a young blonde woman. She was like late teens, like early 20s, and she was around 5'6" tall, at least 5'6", because obviously I was remote viewing, so I'm sort of seeing her visually in a basement of this house, and so I'm sort of looking at her, but just like obviously I'm only 5'2", so I was looking up a little bit. But like I say, she was probably in I would say, visually, the glances, definitely very late teens, 19, but definitely early 20s. That's what my very first thought was, okay, this is a young woman. And it was interesting because what really stood out about her and caught my eye was her outfit that she was wearing. She was wearing like and there's a picture in this report too. It's like a 1970s style, like yellow flared trousers with a flare. And then like a white blouse or a light coloured shirt with like a yellow waistcoat, sort of like a suit. It was really weird. Let me just go for the picture and I can describe it better. So yeah, it was, and I'm not sure if the trousers were plaid. I'm not quite sure about that, but it was like a yellow sort of waistcoat suit, but very 1970s. Bright yellow waistcoat, trouser, like a trouser suit. That's, yeah. And I remember thinking, whoa, that's, bright. But I feel like I was supposed to see it like that. Like it was that bright because it could have been the last outfit she was last seen wearing. I'm going to say my blonde, long blonde hair. Yeah, long blonde hair, and my blonde, she had like blue eyes too. Long blonde hair, blue eyes. So I remember when I was visually sort of seeing this young woman, she was sort of like looking up at the bottom, what looked like the bottom of my basement stairs, and I remember I was counting these stairs. Let me just find out how many steps there were, because for me, I'm like, why am I counting these steps and why is that important? It could be very important. So there's no reason why I would just be stood there, because I was visually sort of looking at what the young woman was looking at, and I was just sort of seeing the silhouette of a guy at the top of the stairs at the door. I'm thinking, and I can make out like bristles of like mustache and maybe a beard or anything. Pretty stocky. I mean, back then, obviously, people's weight changes over years, over time, but looking up, I would have to estimate, as a guess, possibly, obviously taller than her, but maybe about at least 6 feet. Definitely about at least 5'11" to 6 feet. But definitely a bit stockier. I really want to just figure out how many. I remember counting steps, and I don't know why I would just stand there going. Well, I mean, I was literally counting these basement steps. It was very strange. There's no way I would just be count. Yeah, it was like and it was a ranch style home. Let me just go to let me just keep looking through, because I'm sort of reading I'm looking at the report now, but I mean, I just assumed it was Jacksonville. It could have been this could have been anywhere in Florida, or anywhere, but it looked like I don't know why I went straight with Jacksonville, Florida anyway, because of hearing it so much. I'll come to the number of steps in a moment. So basically what was happening was she was obviously that's where he'd taken her, and she didn't leave that basement alive. It's really sad, actually. But I felt this felt like it was like I mean, she could have gone missing, I feel like she went missing in 1970s. Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure I'm not missing anything out. So yeah, like I say, I was seeing this, and I've seen a very clear description of her, and then the next video visual, because it was photographic visual, was a young brunette, maybe a lot younger, but she looked like she had a South American sort of ethnicity sort of look to her, like a maybe Mexico, somewhere like that, that very South American sort of look, possibly Colombia or anywhere like that, South America. But she was young, brown eyes, long, again, probably about here, hair went down to just over her shoulders. And it was weird. I could not get a height for this young woman, but I know she was young. Because when I was sort of seeing her, I was obviously I stood right there, and I'm sort of with her, but I'm watching her. She's in the same basement where I saw the young blonde woman. Well, now I was seeing a different visual of another victim who was in the same basement, and I remember because there was furniture in the basement, and the furniture was the same. But this particular time, the brunette, she was crouching down, like she was hiding behind the cabinet, trying not to be seen, but she was already taken there. Okay, 20 steps. Oh, good Lord. 20 wooden steps. I don't know why. I mean, I just remember it was this visual I was seeing from her perspective as she's looking up. That's when I was starting to count the steps, and obviously wooden steps. So I'm looking up, and I literally counted it as 20 steps, at least 20 wooden steps up this basement. I don't know if that would have been relevant to I don't know if this back then. I mean, maybe this house is something, I don't know why. I just remember I felt like I needed to count these steps, so I don't ignore anything. Yeah, it had just sort of even though it was a silhouette, I was sort of seeing distinguishing features of like a sort of mustache and a beard. I don't know what is it. I mean, I couldn't see his ethnicity or anything, or age unknown back then either. Now, what I was seeing in the one video visual, it looked like a video visual, but I was seeing this guy, and I feel like it's the same guy. He was, I was seeing him in bars, and he was attracting, it's weird because he didn't stand out. You wouldn't, it's almost like you would not even assume this guy, he just sort of blended in, he fitted in and everything. But in these bars, the young women would be there drinking, but he would be picking up their tabs. Oh yeah, you know, like I'll buy her a drink out, the next one's on me. And obviously he was, you know, he wasn't sort of actively trying to sort of come onto them or anything like that. You know, they were just sort of doing it, but he would be picking up their bill, like he would be like, would you like, you know, would you like another drink? And that's, it was a way of how he would warm up to them. And it went, obviously because they're picking up the bill, that he's picking up the bill, it sort of made, you know, and he wasn't coming onto them like some guys would, like full on. They didn't feel threatened by him. It was a really weird, it was like a strange little MO, like it didn't stand out to the point where, oh God, yeah, he was like Bob, let's just say for example, Bob, Johnny, whatever his name was. Oh yeah, he was really hitting on them, and we go for these young women. It wasn't like that. It was almost like, oh yeah, it's just, yeah, he likes to pick up the girls' tabs, but you would not suspect him of anything. And then it was almost like that. And then the next visual, it was like he would see these young girls outside the bars. Hey, do you need a ride home? And like back in the 70s and 80s, there was a lot of hitchhiking back then. So, and because these young women were like already having their tabs, they'd already had a comfort zone with him a little bit. I'd say he was able to sort of entice them in, so nothing looked suspicious or out of the ordinary. Like, oh yeah, sure, well, you're just Bob, Johnny, whatever. Yeah, he just gave the girl, made sure they got home okay. If there was any suspicion back then, that's kind of how it was like if he was a person of interest back then. But I don't feel like he didn't stand out. And like I say, you know, sort of hitchhiking or getting rides home, you know, stuff like that back then would have been just a normal thing. Obviously, be careful about doing that today, but Uber and stuff. But yeah, but the problem was the girls were like, okay, yeah, sure, you know, thanks for picking up the tab and all that kind of stuff. So they were already, again, there was that sort of like comfort element already, like, well, he hasn't hit on me. I guess he just wants to make sure I get home safe. Oh, no. Once she was in that car, once those women got in that car, in his vehicle, yeah, that was it. He was able to, he would just literally like knock them out. Like once they were sat down in the car, he would just punch them, like right in the temple, or it would just knock them out. And that would be it. They'd wake up in this basement. And I feel like that with them, and I don't feel like there was I feel like there was a lot of young women that went missing. So he may have sort of traveled around Florida. He may have traveled around the States. And that's how he would just, you know, was able to sort of entice young women. And, you know, like I say, but I don't know why I kept hearing Jacksonville. So I feel like there was just a lot of young women going missing then. But they were just, again, categorized as runaways. But they weren't runaways. They were, I feel like, that's why I feel like he was an active serial killer back then. And this is how he was just, you know, getting them off the streets and kidnapping them. I mean, I feel like this is one way he would entice the women. But doesn't mean he didn't also kidnap them, you know, an opportunity, sort of. I don't know, it was just weird. He was whoever this guy was just evil. And, you know, you could, if you was a young woman back then, it was almost like, oh, it's just like my dad, you know, he's just trying to look out for me. Nope, unfortunately. And so that's why I feel like that's how he was able to entice a lot of these so-called runaway women. That's why I call them my missing Florida gals. And that's why I feel like this is definitely situated in Florida, this serial killer. And he was a serial killer. So, and again, like I said, and then in his neighborhood, like when I was seeing a photographic visual, I was seeing what looked like a ranch-style home. But there was neighbors, like there was neighbors' houses. And you would just not suspect. You would not suspect. It's almost like the neighbors would never suspect this man to be a serial killer. And I'll tell you something else as well. This guy, what I was also seeing was the basement, concrete. I mean, there was a concrete basement floor. And then I'm not sure. I feel like some of them were killed in the basement but buried. And it's like also the garden. So I don't know how big the garden, I mean, I didn't see the size of the garden, but it must have been big enough because it was a literal cemetery. It was like a graveyard. Like his own back garden was a graveyard of his victims. Summary. Yeah, the feelings I was getting from, actually, when I was connected to their energy frequencies, these gals, pure fear. Like, they didn't know him. They didn't know him personally. They didn't know him. So it was a full-blown stranger. I mean, I've put my own sort of profile together in here as well of being connected to. I'm getting a feeling of his energy frequency off the girls, of what they were feeling. And remember, I'm sort of seeing and feeling their last memories too. It's not pleasant. He was an absolute predator back then. I also feel like he's a known sexual predator. Like, I feel like he's known, but again, maybe when I was seeing him, he might have just been starting out. But each visual, it was different, because towards the end of the visuals, it was like his garden was a graveyard. It was just really sick. Now, something about the concrete floor in the basement. It's almost like I was seeing one visual, and I'm not going to say which victim this was because it's not nice and pleasant, but one of the victims has literally her head was smashed against this concrete. He was smashing her head against this concrete basement. So, and what I was seeing was like, it's like the blood was seeping into the concrete, which tells me that concrete basement, it's got DNA in it. Obviously, blood DNA. And it doesn't even matter how much you try and clean that basement floor up, because it was seeping in to the concrete. So, he was a very violent, evil, violent man. And it's almost like his different, like his sort of, he had a different killing MO too. It was really weird. Like, it was brutal. So it's almost like his methods of killing would probably just differ. So if there was ever if there's a victim, like, I mean, I want to come to the update video. I don't want to discuss it too, but I'll come back to this point in the update part of this video. Now, like I say, I was sort of criminally profiling him because of the energy connection from the frequencies, and it just blends in, like, but that doesn't mean, I feel like I don't know, it felt like he maybe had like a friend or somebody else knew. There's no way he was keeping no, there's no way. There's no way he was able to do what he does without somebody knowing. But his neighbours, it felt like when I was sort of visually seeing the neighbourhood, it's like they wouldn't have suspected him, put it that way. Maybe this is why he got away with it. Also, what else was I saying? So if some of these young women are not buried in the basement, on the concrete flooring, rear garden, obviously, but there's a patio, a possible patio area. Need to be looking under there. And so obviously I got the action obviously was back then was now, and then I distributed the data report to Jacksonville Police Department. That was action to take, and then obviously action to take was distribute data report to Jacksonville Police Department, because that was just coming up so prevalent. Like, I kept hearing Jacksonville, so, and then monitor updates for a Florida serial killer. So that was obviously, again, this was on the 26th of February 2020. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to discuss an update to my cold case CCMP02. Any Florida serial killers? Well, this guy came to light. It turns out he was actually arrested November 2020. I did this case. I worked on this case in February 26th of February 2020, which means it could have been a prediction of the same. This guy, William Mansfield, who was arrested in 2020, he could possibly be the same, my serial killer. And basically what I was seeing was just a serial killer coming, basically a prediction of a serial killer getting arrested for these missing women. Now, could this guy be the same serial killer? Even though he was from Hernando County, Florida, still Florida. Like I say, I felt like he moved around. Like he could have, his job could have, entailed he moved around a lot. Apparently he's suspected of killing somebody, a young woman in California. So clearly he moves around. Now he could have visited Jacksonville. There could be some victims in Jacksonville that he is responsible for, missing young women. So, but then as I was sort of watching the news, when I finally got the links and I finally saw this news footage of this case of an update of this guy who got this Florida serial killer, I was like, what the fuck? So I'm intrigued now. Now as I'm visually watching law enforcement, in his back garden, as soon as I saw that aerial view, I'm like, oh God, that looks familiar. And even they were calling it like a graveyard in his back garden. I'm thinking, oh God, I feel like this is my guy. This is my guy. This is the guy there's got to be a basement in there somewhere. I mean, I'm assuming it's a basement. It could be a freaking underground, anything like that. But there's something underground in this man's property. Now, one of his possible victims that I was listening from an article, which really intrigued me, was the missing 20-year-old who went missing in 1979, and her name was Sharon A. Hara. Okay. She looks very similar to my young blonde who was in the yellow 1970s style outfit. I would be intrigued to know if anybody remembers the last outfit she was seen wearing. Because when I was seeing her, that was the last outfit she was seen in. That was her final outfit. So if she was wearing something very similar to the suit, the long 1970s light, like yellow, I mean, the colour was very apparent and prevalent anyway. That's a big, yeah, that's definitely, I will know for sure that this guy is. So if Sharon was wearing a similar outfit to something like that, her last outfit, or she was last seen wearing something like that, or she was known to wear an outfit like that, maybe the colour is just something to do with the brightness, and it could have had something to do with the way she dressed and everything, and vibrant colours. I mean, that could have been a personality or anything like bright, and but anyway, I just felt she looked very similar to my young blonde woman. But I believe she was from Palm Harbor. Now, there was also a possible connection, like I feel like they're trying to possibly think he's connected to the disappearance of a young woman called 16-year-old Teresa Caroline Fillingham. Now, my young brunette, again, as soon as I saw the picture of Teresa Caroline, I'm thinking, oh God, she looks just like my young brunette. The only difference was, in the picture of Teresa, she's got sort of short brown hair with brown eyes. My brunette had brown eyes, but long. I don't know if Teresa had long hair at one point, but there was just something to do with that, the hair. But there's a very similar look. Yeah. So if these, the possible links, I feel like my case, I don't know, my intuition and everything tells me this guy is the same serial killer I was seeing in my visuals during this investigation. And I just feel like there's more, like there's a lot more. And like I say, back then I sent my data report back then to Jacksonville Police Department. That back in at the end of either the end of February or just beginning of March. I know it wasn't long after I typed up the case and the case report and everything anyway. So I don't know if that has something to do with finding this guy. I mean, I don't know if any of the information in the data report triggered something from back in the 70s and 80s. Like, okay, we had a lot of young girls going missing back then. Maybe we need to look a little bit closer. Could have had anything to do with that. Or it may not. But either way, what I was seeing was a serial killer was killing young women in Florida. That's why I called it my Missing Florida Women. But again, I feel like so many of the young women that were reported missing, I don't feel like some of them were reported missing properly either. Like I say, I feel like some of them were classed as runaways back then. Now, if you can sort of tie this guy, this William Mansfield, to some of the young girls who were runaways, you can pretty much close some of those cases. It's really sad. So I just feel like, even now, I just feel like this guy, this William Mansfield, was the same serial killer I was seeing. He may have just been a bit stockier back then, in the, you know, when I was sort of seeing him back then, 70s and 80s. Like, maybe I feel like it was like in the 70s anyway, and 80s, but he might have just been a bit of a larger guy. I don't know. People change. I mean, looking at him, it's not impossible. It's not, I mean, the goatee and everything. It's like weird. But, and then, like I say, I was looking at that visual, that aerial visual of the neighborhood. I'm thinking, well, yeah, it's got a plot of land there, but all the houses look very similar, like very sort of ranch style houses too. But I'm thinking, well, I could see why, if he was killing those women, I mean, he had enough. His garden's a freaking graveyard, obviously. You probably wouldn't, I don't know, his neighbours probably wouldn't have suspected anything. And they never do anyway, do they? Until after the fact. Like, oh my God, I never knew. Oh my God. And when you think about some of the, like, I don't know, maintenance work people do, like building and all that kind of stuff, conversions or extensions and stuff, you don't suspect anything, do you? And then you look back and you go, oh, that explains the new patio. Oh, that would explain. Okay. Oh, things just sort of trigger. It's memory, isn't it? Long-term memory. But I feel like, in conclusion, as an update, I intuitively and personally think William Mansfield's the person I was seeing, who was basically killing these young women and burying them in his garden. Absolutely. So that is case CCMP02. Really. So other than that, I will see you all again very soon for another investigation. Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Karen Makowski. I'm the leading investigator on any of my cases, parapsychology or paranormal investigations. Welcome. I'm obviously, I'm just doing a lot of videos today. I need to lots of update videos, etc. I'm just working on this series right now, pulling all these cases together for another series, but this is case CCMP22. Again, these were a lot of cases that I lost when my sort of computer and stuff got hacked a while back, but Just sort of reworking on, not the part of a series, but now CCMP 22. This was downloaded data and recorded on the 4th of November 2022 at 3:10 p.m. Like I say, there is a different, I do have a separate report, scientific and environmental data report, same data, just a slightly different report for those that do want the data, environmental data and stuff like that. Now, when I connected to a female frequency, energy frequency, and she was very chatty, so there's a lot of clairaudience messages that, you know, coming through. Was so I hear the following. I'll discuss the following before I discuss the visuals I was seeing. I heard the name Sean, or Sean. There's two ways you can spell Sean. Drugs. My son is guilty. Penny dropping. I know some of these words that I hear are not always going to make sense, but I had to say them as I hear them. Penny dropping. Holland. California. Drugs and money. You will find him under the bridge. Pawned my rings. Fast cash. Your suspect is wrong. Christine or Christy. That was weird because when I was hearing that name, it was like, was that Christine or Christy? And sometimes because energy is very fast, I have to, you know, get everything down as quickly as possible. And again, if there's accents involved, I've got to at least give a couple of interpretations, so or options anyway, at least. But it felt so I wasn't sure if it was Christine or Christy. So, in the first visual, I was stood at an underpass bridge off a busy highway. And the bridge had multiple archways that accommodated homeless people. I could see tents and plastic sheeting and tarps. And I was shown this, I was definitely shown this location for a reason. It's almost like I was stood with the victim, and she was showing me where to find her killer. And so it just felt like I had to really grab all of this information. And then in the second visual, she was showing me, I was seeing, I was inside a house in a suburban street, and the place looked ransacked, and I felt like this was the victim's home. And she was the victim of the home. She was a victim of a home invasion. That's what happened to her. She was strangled, unfortunately, and so this might be important to. Obviously, this will be distributed to California. See, again, going back to a lot of my data reports I lost a while ago and videos, it's like I need to probably redistribute these anyway, so I will. But I feel like I already distributed it anyway. Regardless, she was obviously strangled, and then I got the sense that the autopsy obviously will not. There'll be no sexual assault or anything like that. It's just strangulation. I feel, and you know, and then it started to feel like she was telling me it was her own son that did it for drug money. And whoever they got, so I feel like they do have a suspect in custody for a possible home invasion of a woman, and blonde hair, slim physique. Yeah, she had shoulder length blonde hair. She looked to be between the ages of 45 to 55. So it's possible that a home invasion with a description of a woman like this who was a victim of a possible home invasion because of the ransacked home. They may have arrested somebody else, but I was feeling that she was telling me the suspect is wrong. They'll find the real suspect, which is her son, under the bridge amongst the homeless. So now, the relevance to, I do not know if there's any relevance to the country Holland, or if this is a surname or connected to the family, but California came through strong. It's possible the pawned rings were for fast cash, or there could have been a pawn shop close to the crime scene called Fast Cash. Christy or Christine could be the name of the victim. So these are information for law enforcement, I guess, if this resonates somehow with a home invasion case in California somewhere. So yeah, obviously summarising, it's a possible victim places in the suburbs and in California. The victim knew who killed her, and it was her own son. And she came through very strongly with that. He could have been a drug addict or something, and obviously being homeless. But the underground bridge where that homeless is, that's his location. Or could be still. It could be his location still if he's still there. And like I say, I heard the name Sean or Sean, so you may have to just connect the dots. I also felt like someone, again, person of interest, the suspect was the wrong person. Hey, make mistakes. Just correct them. Action date now, obviously, and then just distribute. And then action to take is just distribute the data and archive it. So, I just felt like the energy frequency of this woman, this victim, she was pretty much just showing me what happened to her, little bits of information, and who did it, who was guilty, and where to find her perpetrator. Well, her own son, she was telling me. So that is case CCMP22. Again, like I say, I'll get this pretty sure, I don't care. I'm just sort of redistributing all my reports anyway. So, I hope that if there is a case like this, or very similar to something like this in California, it may just need a second look, obviously, and if this sort of resonates to a law enforcement, I don't know exactly. I don't even know if Holland is like an area or a county or something in California. I haven't really delved into it, but there's something about, I don't even know if Holland is like a surname or anything, but I'm not going to ignore anything I hear. And like I say, when I'm automatic writing, I'm grabbing everything I can. So now I guess it's just putting the pieces together, and you know, there's interpretations too. Everything can be interpreted when it comes to paranormal science and the realm of paranormal investigations. You can't. It's not just one way. You have to have an open mind about it. But anyway, I hope this helps. But obviously it can be archived too. But it's really sad. But this is energy will come through. Energy. Once I connect to that frequency, it's grab what I can, and that's it. And hopefully they just sort of cross over then. And hey everybody, I'm Dr. Karen Makowski. I'm the leading investigator on any of my cases, parapsychology or paranormal investigations. Welcome. So today I'm going to be discussing case CCMP42. Now, this data was gathered on 20th of... Good Lord, I forgot what month it was in now. April. 20th of April 2022. I don't even know what month it is anymore. It's just flying by. And this was gathered at 6 a.m. Now, I connected to energy and I saw, I'm still getting information and data on sex trafficking and things like this. How global it is. So, this one, I was seeing a young a foreign tourist. She was a young woman. She was working in Spain, so this is Spain and the Canary Islands. Now, I've been to Canary Islands and all over Spain, obviously, so I'm very aware of young women going to these to find jobs, seasonal jobs, stuff like that. But once you sort of get there, you just love it so much that you want to stay there, but you have to work. Now, I feel like this sex trade has infiltrated these beautiful Spanish islands, unfortunately. There was always something wrong. There was always something dodgy back then. I remember having to be careful, especially as a young foreign tourist too. I remember having to be streetwise, eyes in the back of your head, be careful where, you know, you don't walk alone, walk on your own and alone and stuff like that. and always just sort of, I don't know, you could have a good time, but you had to be very careful, and that was back then for me. These days, I feel like it's 10 times worse. And I'll discuss an example of what I'm talking about, what could have happened to me back in the day when I was in Turkey, but we'll stick with this one. But this is how, for me, seeing these young European, these tourist women, and they could be from all over the world, but more so probably Europe, back, in this case. So they were looking for work, and I don't know, it just feels like there's a lot of young tourist women going missing in Spain and Canary Islands, and rather than they're looking for work, but they're literally getting kidnapped into the sex trade, basically. Now, one visual, I was a young woman in her early 20s with long brown curly hair. And I was watching her. She was making like cocktails at a bar owned by this very evil man. Oh my God. I mean, I'm remote viewing, but if I was physically there, I'd probably just, well, anyway, he was evil. And what I was sort of seeing, like, sort of really shocked me, because he was, before she started a shift, this like bar, I was watching him physically beating her, and I'm like, what the? And then obviously in the, before a shift in the back room, and then she was doing a shift. Obviously she was a mess, but she was making cocktails. And then it sort of, I flipped to a bit further on, after the shift. During the evening, after her shift ended, she was then forced to have sex, right, with men. And I remember thinking, oh God, no way, here we go. It was that's when I knew I was dealing with one of these cases again. But I saw her running away from these men, so she was pretty much trying to escape. And then basically they caught her and murdered her. And that, unfortunately, was the unfortunate end of that young woman, and it was just horrible. So not only was she sort of, I don't know how long she'd been dealing with this, but not only was she beaten prior to starting the shift, but then what she had to endure after it was just horrific. So I don't know if there's a young woman who's missing, a young tourist woman. I didn't get the ethnicity or anything like that, or where they were from. But it felt like Europe, and Europe's a big areas, but there's a lot of European women that, again, like go to Spain and Canary Islands. So there's a young European woman, long brown curly hair, young early 20s, who was last known to be visiting Spain or the Canary Islands, and then they came home, so she could be registered as a missing person. Yeah, that's what happened to her. And then in the next visual was very similar. It was almost like a repeat of the same scenario of young women working in these bars on the Spanish islands and forced into the sex slavery. If they refused to try and fight back, escape, they would get murdered. So the final visual was a photograph of what looked like the oh God, yeah. This is what really upset me, actually. I'm still, and this will really piss me off because it was really fast too. And I couldn't get any freaking names because it was too fast. Fleeting. Got to grab what I can. But I was seeing a visual photograph of what looked like the names of hundreds of missing young female tourists. And you know me, I'm just like, oh God, seriously, I need the names. But it was just like, oof. I mean, when it comes to connecting with energy frequencies, you've got to grab what you can fast. And it was just it was like really fleeting. So action date now, obviously, and then the action to take is to notify the public. Look, ladies, be very careful. I know what it's like to visit Spain. It's a beautiful country. Even the Canary Islands, beautiful. But there is a deep, dark, seedy world in those in those places where there's tourists, there's evil men, and there's evil women, because evil women do this today. You have to be careful. You cannot become complacent. You've got to keep your guard up. Again, when I was going back into my 20s and, 30s and traveling to Spain and being all over Spain, and the Canary Islands, I love the Canary Islands, but when you're there, it's great. You can let your hair down, you can have fun, and you do become, obviously you start binge drinking and stuff like this. That's normal in Spain. There's nobody that goes to Spain that doesn't binge drink and doesn't do that. It's like going to Cancun in Mexico. It's no different. But you have to be careful. You've got to fit, because there are evil men, especially, there is. It's more men that do this, but it's evil women too. They're involved in it now because it's $1 trillion industry. But there are always going to be predators in the background waiting and watching. You are a sexual commodity. It's just sex trade. They don't care about you. You're not special to them. You are just a euro sign, a euro dollar, pound sign, whatever. You're just money to them. And when you're young and you're naive and you're free, so free like that too, you're the perfect, target. So I remember being in Spain and bar hopping and all that kind of good stuff and dancing and having a good time, but there was and obviously because I've got really strong intuition, but there was always something about, I can't get completely drunk like my friends are. One of us has to be semi-sober. Always like that with me. And I always had to be semi-sober. I mean, didn't mean I couldn't have a few cocktails and a few beers, but I never got intoxicated to the point where I didn't know where we were. So by the end of the great evenings and having fun, I was always able to get us home back to our hotel or apartment. Simple as that. Because you lower your inhibitions when you think, oh yeah, everyone's having a great time, but you don't know who's prowling around and watching. And it was always like that. So, and even in Gran Canaria, that was dodgy as fuck. I mean, not being funny, but there's an area in this Irish area, fucking IRA. Seriously, they're dodgy as fuck, right? I'm very aware of these types of criminals that live in Spain, that are not living in England for a reason, or Ireland, because they're on the freaking run. These are murderers, rapists, they're worst types of men. When they end up in these sort of places, they have to make money. So I was very aware of that dodgy area in Canary Islands. I don't know if that's any different now. It's probably still the same. But the sex trafficking ring and the trade of this sex trade has got worse and worse over the decades. It's worse now than it ever was before. So ladies, go to Spain, go to the Canary Islands. It's beautiful. Tenerife, Lanzarote, Gran Canaria. I love those places. They're amazing. They're beautiful. One, remember just on volcanoes, right? But just have fun there. But be careful. Do not let your guards down ever, because it's beautiful. The weather's amazing, but it's very dangerous too. And again, the first time I went to abroad I was with my very first boyfriend, and I went to Turkey, Uludeniz, and I was with people. I wasn't like on a binge holiday drinking or anything like that. I was with my first boyfriend, and we was in the marketplace, and I'm like looking for Levi jeans because everything was a lot cheaper there. And he, my ex is kind of doing this thing, looking at other stalls, and I remember this guy, and this is how quick it can happen. And I remember this saying, oh yeah, all the Levi jeans are up here. But the way, it was like a freaking lorry, and it was open, but there was like curse hangers and everything of some like climbing up into this freaking van, right, lorry, thinking, okay, Levi jeans, yeah, I'll get my sister some for a gift. But the moment I stood up and I got in, he tried pulling the freaking lorry door down at the gate, and I'm like, what? And I was just like, where I'm from, you had to be streetwise, and you need to have a big mouth, right? And I just remember looking and going, what are you doing? Open that up now, and I started shouting, so I was making a scene, and he went, okay, lady, whatever. Okay, calm down. I went, cough. I don't know what the hell would have happened to me had he been able to shut that door and I wasn't mouthy. I dread to think, but because I was so Oh, I'm okay. I'm just having fun. I'm abroad. Oh, look at all these cheap stuff, jeans and clothes. No, you've got to keep your wits about you, because it happens just like that. So anyway, I jumped out and I gave him the finger and I'm like, fuck you. And I went looking for my ex and I'm like, you're not going to believe what just happened to me. And he's like, oh, what the hell? So I said, let's just get away from here. Let's just go back to the hotel. When you're on your resorts, you need to stay on your resorts. And if you're going to go into the cities or you're going to go and do the tourist, then you need to not be alone. You need to make sure you're with a group of people or someone, because you're a target. You're a sitting duck. You're just a target everywhere. Whether they're just pickpocketing, whether they're going to... be careful, ladies. Just, there's evil people all over the world. So, but for some strange reason, when we're on holiday, and I've been there, I've done it myself, you learn the hard way, you just become a bit complacent than you do at home in your own country. It's like, oh God, how did I survive that? How did I survive that vacation? You've got to listen to your intuition. And if you don't, you're going to be in trouble. So I get it. I understand why a lot of young women, they want to, stay. I mean, you want to look at Ibiza. Everyone's out there for like sex, drugs, partying, yeah. And they just don't, well, actually, they just don't give a shit what they get involved in. As long as they can stay there for a season, right? And get paid. They don't care what they do. I'm not talking about those men or women, right? Each to your own. But there is a seedy side to Ibiza. That doesn't mean what I'm talking about isn't very active there either. So there's that want to go to Ibiza for the club scene and stuff like that and the partying. They're not interested in just like, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, anytime, I'm not talking about that. They're there to have fun, but these are the young women that can be targets. And again, there's this mentality in men that just assume all women are the same. No, we're not. And not all women are that free and easy and open either. And not all men are that free and easy and open either. So it's just an ignorance of men's mentality. Well, if these chicks, they're all like, all easy. Just because they are, doesn't mean the other ones are. No. They might just be here for a good time with their friends. Leave them alone. But they don't think like that. They just want to basically sexually assault them. God, the scary stories I used to hear back in the day, firm parties, if you look at the statistics of young female tourists that used to go to these pool parties, were firm parties in the pool, they used to get raped in the fucking pool, right? In front of hundreds and hundreds of people. But everyone's too busy having fun to care. They become a rape statistic. That was big. Back in the day when I used to go to Spain, so I was always very aware of these firm parties. Like, if I went in the firm party, I stayed right at the edge. There's no way I was going in. Not because I knew of all the victims that these young women that were tourists, right? This is what was happening so big back then. And I just remember thinking, I'm not going in there. Oh, God, seriously. I heard about this. Oh my God, this is a big thing. This has been happening a lot. Oh my God. Hey, stay there. Dance here. Don't go too far in. So you couldn't completely really enjoy yourself in the same way because of the crime racketing that was happening back then. So that was big, the firm party rapes. I'm not going to sugarcoat or say block out the word of what was happening. I'm a truth speaker. And if it offends you to hear that reality, that's on you. I don't care. This is what was happening. So many different things just that would happen to young women. Even when there was groups of friends in the hotel rooms, I mean, the amount of times that people used to come back from a club and go, oh my God, we've been robbed. Oh my God, all of our money and everything's gone missing. Our passports. That's what that security box is for. But then again, you have to be careful because the very people that were robbing your hotel rooms were the freaking workers, the staff there. So I remember having to find hiding places in the hotel room because I was not trusting that security box. It is just off the charts. That's what it was like. So you had to go and enjoy Spain and enjoy the Canary Islands with that mentality of always being, you are just walking money right now. They don't care. And if they can steal from you or use you, they will. So that's why I just say, hey, it's, again, Spain's beautiful. It's a beautiful country. Canary Islands are amazing. But don't ever think for a second there's not a dark side to those places. There is a dark side everywhere. And like I say, when you're a tourist and you're a woman too, a young woman, you're targets. So be very careful, ladies, and young men too, because it's weird to do. It's just weird. But you know what I'm talking about. So be careful, because it just feels like what I was seeing was like a list, oh God, just missing women, young women, tourists. And it's like you don't see them again. They're never found. And they're not really found a lot. And if they do, they're not alive. And if you're going to find them, if you can find them, they're probably on the dark web. I'm serious. It's an evil world we live in. The world's not the problem. It's a beautiful planet. It's the fucking people problem. These are evil people on this planet. That's it. That's how bad it is. And it's getting worse. It's not getting better. So now you've got to be a lot more vigilant and careful than you ever were before. And even back then I used to think, yeah, it wasn't as bad. But it was bad. And it probably was just as bad. It just wasn't as rampant as it is now. So just be very careful, guys and gals, at this point. Enjoy Spain. Again, I'm not knocking Spain. No. I love Spain. I absolutely love it. It was one of my favourite places to go, and I love the Canary Islands. But there are dodgy people, very evil people and dodgy people in those. Where there's tourists, there's crime. Now it's just a different type of sex trafficking crime, so just please be careful. That's it. So, obviously I like how this data report, I mean, I'm not going to send this to Spain. I'll go Gran Canaria. So those police, they don't give a shit. They don't even like tourists. One thing I know about the police in Spain and Canary Islands is they're too busy to deal with this crap. No, they don't care. Right? That's another reason why I'm telling you guys and girls to be careful, because the police do not give a shit about you in those countries. You only have to go to Spain to know how much the police hate the English because of our binge drinking and our partying ways. They don't care about us. Don't be that naive. Don't disillusion yourself. So there's no point in me sending this to them. What it's telling you is if you know of somebody that's been to these places and they've just gone missing, well, this is it. This is why. So be careful. Always have a backup plan when you're in these countries. Wherever you go, to be honest, these days. It's not even just Spain or the Canary Islands anymore. Hell, I mean, I've been all over the place and there's always something going on in those. And it's like, how did I even escape that? It's not just Spain or the Canary Islands, but I know this is big there. Hey everybody, I'm Dr. Karen Makowski. I'm the leading investigator on any of my cases, parapsychology or paranormal investigations. Welcome. Now today I'm going to be discussing a very important cold case. I've been wanting to connect to, this is an important young little girl that literally had to basically lose her life in order to save thousands of children every year. She's the reason why Amber Alerts is here. This is Amber Hageman. Now, as we know, she was kidnapped and she was abducted and murdered and fought, and it's really horrible case. But I've wanted to connect to Amber's frequency for a while now, because I just wanted to know. I wanted to sort of see her last memory, and I wanted to know who killed her. Basically, that's the intention behind this case. It's not so much about who, is she still missing? No, this is about catching her killer, literally. So this is case CCMP 43. It's a case of Amber Hageman. I felt like the energy was really good. If I correct too, I believe the humidity, which is interesting, the humidity 11%, which is perfect for me, because usually when the humidity is a bit high, it doesn't affect me working on cases, and it takes a little bit longer to connect to the frequency, so I like it low. And I remember actually, because when I was working on this case yesterday on the 26th of April. Obviously, this is going straight to Texas, to the detectives on this case immediately. But I just remember coming out of it feeling like I really got a lot of data. I saw a lot, I connected really well and quite fast too, which is quite nice. But it helps that I've had an upgrade recently with my abilities anyway. So, yeah, I'm going to be careful when I do discuss, but obviously remote viewing. So again, like I say, once I connected to the frequency of Amber Hagerman, I was seeing her riding her bike. Let me be careful. I need to make sure this. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to say too much about the vehicle. I mean, I know there was a vehicle mentioned in the, from witness, but could be a couple of little extra things in regards to that I was able to sort of see. But again, because I wanted to see her last memory of, and that's how it is for me anyway. She was just riding a bike, and she was, oh God, my clairsentience and everything. I was feeling everything, like, as soon she was startled by somebody honking their horn behind her, and it startled her, and I felt this thud, like, oh God, and she got really, even I was like, like someone's scaring you. Well, that's what it was like. So there was this. It was a truck, but I'm not going to go into detail in the truck. But anyway, I remember I remember, because I'm remote viewing, so I'm visually seeing what she's seen at the end, at that moment in time. And then she sort of like startled but scared, and then the guy pulled up to the side of her, and he already had his like window down and stuff, and he was like waving to her and like saying hi, and but she was smart. She wasn't having any of that. So she put it, and then he pulled in front of her. Then she was like, no, and she was she was turning around. She turned the bike to go the other opposite direction, and that's pretty much how he took her. I'm not going to go into detail any more than that, because that's for the detectives. I have a description of the man. I got names too. There's an interesting thing about the names. I'm not going to say too much, but there's a reason why I feel like I was hearing many male names. In the report, I think you're going to understand why, which made complete sense. This guy knew the area. He was familiar with the area. I was seeing points of interest, which could, and I know where she was last encountered, where she was last seen. There's a build-up, like there's a sort of urban build of buildings and things like this. But this, what I was seeing, might be slightly just not far, not too far, but just slightly on the outskirts a little bit maybe. But as for the description of what I was seeing, I'm not going to say any more than that, because that's for the detectives, investigators. That's the other thing. I'd be intrigued to know. I will say this. I know that her bike was found. But what I was seeing was he picked the bike up and threw it in the bed of his truck. Now, I don't know if he left it somewhere else. But I was sort of seeing he picked the bike up too. Threw that in the bed of the truck. But he may have left it, he may have just put it somewhere else. I don't know if if that's not what happened, I can't, there's something about that sort of scenario situation, like, I don't know, I don't even want to speculate. but I just remember what I was visually seeing. I don't know why you I even questioned why would you take the bike with you, unless again it was to leave it somewhere else in a different spot to sort of throw people off. I don't. It could be something to do with that, but I'm not going to say anything more about the rest is in the report. I'm not going to give too much away. Not with this one. This is an important one because I want this little girl needs justice. Or at least closure. Her family needs closure. So there's like, I was seeing visuals of sort of what was happening at that point. And then I saw another video visual of where he was taking her. Which would explain what I was seeing too. And that's why what I was seeing in regards to what I don't want to discuss is very important, because that there could still be possibly something, even, I don't know if there would be DNA. Well, I don't know these days. I mean, technology is amazing. But anything, I mean, there's no way I would see that much detail for no reason whatsoever. But I don't want to say too much into that one. Now, there was a photographic visual too. I do have a description of the man. I'm not going to give too much of that away. Not till I catch him. Now, like I say, interesting information. So there was a message for law enforcement too. If law enforcement has DNA from a male suspect from Amber, they may now find him they may now find a match in the Kurdish database, so you might find him now. And in the report, there's reasons why. He's well known. Like, I don't know if he was a well-known paedophile. Okay, are we even allowed to say that these days? I feel like YouTube will kick me off of this. He's a sex offender. Okay. He may possibly be known as a sex offender back then. I feel like if I say the P word, it's going to kick me off YouTube altogether. So I'm going to leave that one alone. I'll call it a sex offender. It could have been a well-known sex offender back then. However, over the years, he is known as a sex offender. That's what I'm saying. You could find him now in the system. Clear audience messages. There's a couple of little things about little words that don't make sense to me, but make complete sense to law enforcement. I'm going to come back to that in a moment, because that was just, it was everything, symbolism and everything, and again, there's so much interpretation, and I couldn't figure out how would a person like this just be able to get away with this for so long, especially with amazing technology and advancements in DNA and everything. But there's a possible reason. Now, I heard after, I'm not going to mention, well, basically, after he left her, he literally crossed county lines. He crossed county lines, but he also crossed state lines within 6 hours of taking her, which may, there's something to do with the county line. Ooh, okay. There's something to do with the county line, but then there's something to do with the state line. So that might explain something to do with that. Let me see what the summary about this one. I really feel like this. I just really want to catch this guy. Seriously. Her family deserves closure, closure and justice. Absolutely. I don't want to say too much. Not with this case. I hate being this. I hate having to be this sort of evasive and but no, I don't even care. I'm not even going to apologise. There's just things I'm not going to mention because I feel like they could really turn this around completely. Now, what I will say is, and this was really weird because I remember in the visual I was thinking, and obviously where I live there's like road runners and all sorts of birds and stuff, but road runners and birds like that, they don't really come that close to you though, at all, you know, no way. However, I remember while I was interacting in this meditation session with Amber, I remember thinking, how has this guy got away for so long? I don't understand. And so I'm sort of asking Source these questions. And then as I literally finished the meditation session, when I opened my eyes, there was a roadrunner bird right in front of me, just stood there. And I'm just looking at it. It's not moving. And I'm looking at it thinking, that's not okay. That's interesting. I don't believe in coincidences. Not because of what I do. And I just remember looking at it thinking, why you stood there? That's not, there's no way a roadrunner bird is going to just stand there at all. And it was like literally staring at me, and I'm like, okay. So I moved my leg to sort of see if it would, and it didn't do anything. And I'm like, that okay, there's something going on here. He's trying to tell me something. And then as soon as I was looking at this roadrunner, then all of a sudden it just went boom, and it just ran off. And as soon as it ran off, and it didn't run away straight away though, that's what was weird. As soon as it ran off, I remember thinking, he was on the run. He was constantly, he was transient. He was on the run. He was road running. He was just running. He lived a life on the run. He was literally a road runner, I guess. That's exactly and I feel like back then it would have been a little bit easier to sort of be on the run, and, you know, before identification was, you know, you could, I mean, back then you could probably get arrested and go, oh, I don't have my ID on me, right? Okay, well, you know, bring it in like 7 days later. Okay, yeah, absolutely. If you were to get arrested or stopped or anything. These days, obviously, you know, you need your ID. You've got to carry your ID everywhere you go with you. Even like changing your name back then and things like that would have been a little bit easier back then. Not so much these days, obviously. There's biometrics and everything today. That's what I'm saying. I feel like, but he would have only been able to do that for so long. And as technology was advancing, I feel like it could have been a little bit harder for him to sort of stay off the radar. So, but there is other reasons also that explains a lot in the report for detectives. But it was really weird because as soon as I saw that roadrunner, I'm like, there's something very symbolic about why that roadrunner stood right in front of me, and that's not normal. And it, you know, I was completely on a completely different freaking dimension. So, you know, it was just weird. And anything that's weird is normal for me. So again, like I say, I'm looking at this roadrunner thinking, what? Hello there. Oh, interesting. What the? That's not. I just knew. And then as soon as it was like, it just stood there for a little bit. That, you know, seconds, but it felt like so long. But then as soon as it ran and did one, and it ran off, I'm like, oh, yeah. He was literally road running. From the moment he probably crossed state lines, I feel like he didn't stop running. So I feel like it's possible he was transient. So I feel like there's a few little bits and pieces in this report. I'm still intrigued about the bike. And if that's not, I don't know why I would be seeing that though, why it would have been taken like that. Interestingly enough, if he picked that bike up and put it in the bed of his truck, there might be fingerprints, again, sweat, DNA, anything. Oh, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this just for the sake of our loved ones. That little girl, when he grabbed her, she was a fighter, I swear to God. She made it quite difficult for him to, you know, she might have been maybe a small little girl, but she was a tough one, that one. And that's why I feel like, the way she was kicking and fighting and all this kind of stuff, that's why I feel like it's why he had to grab the bike. There was just something about the interaction with the bike. He may not have taken that bike and moved it, but there's something to do with that bike. There's got to have been some sort of interaction with that bike. That's what I'm feeling like it could be. Even though, because I was seeing him picking it up and taking it, that might not be so literal. It could have been there's a connection to the bike, like a physical connection, touching, anything, DNA. I feel like there's other DNA, but there's just like, there's something, I don't know why, but yeah, she was going to fight at that one. Okay, I know I've always had that, I've always wanted to, connect to a frequency. I've always wanted to, because, like I say, every time, and it's strange as well, because every time I sort of get an Amber Alert, see an Amber Alert on my phone, I always go straight back to her. It's like, Amber, one of these days, Amber, I'm going to connect to you. One of these days. I mean, I'm very aware of the child that's being abducted or missing and they're looking for, but I always go back to her. So I've always known I was going to connect with her at some point. It's everything is to do with timing. It's, so there's stuff going on to, like, there's things in the report I'd be intrigued to know about too. Yeah. Yeah, with this one it was, and it really made me sad, but I came out of it, when I disconnected the connection with Amber. I felt like there was this feeling that, as awful as it was and everything, like her energy was like, it felt like, it was not in vain. Like, I know that, we all know Amber Alerts was created because of this little girl. But it's almost like doing what I do. Not achievement's not the right word. But there's something about her energy that made me feel like a sense of pride. I mean, there's no real good way to say this, but a right way to say this, but there's like a sense of pride about that. Like, everything in life has meaning. Every interaction we have, there's meaning. Every connection, every interconnection, everything that we do, everything about life, every move we make, there's reason and meaning for it. And that's what it felt like. She knew there was reason and meaning for it, for why. Like, I don't know if that understanding came straight away, but it definitely came later, And again, remember, energy it just moves to a different dimension. Energy is energy. But nevertheless, I just felt really happy that I was able to finally, like, just sort of connect to her frequency, because I've wanted to work on Amber's case for so long. So I do hope that I was able to grab enough data that helps the detective just sort of look at it and go, okay. I mean, they obviously know a lot more than we all know, but yeah. I'm gonna leave that one there. I felt, proud to sort of be connected to her. It's like, finally. Finally was able, because sometimes I really like to, I always want to connect to frequencies, but if they're not ready to be connected to, or the guardians are not going to let them connect, they're not going to connect, so sometimes it can be a lot harder. I mean, there's many reasons for that. Again, depending on what your belief systems are. I'm not here to infringe on people's belief systems, or even believed. It's none of my business what people think or believe. I'm just explaining what it's like for me, doing what I do. But did I feel very proud? Like, oh, thank God for that. It was one of those, like, it's been so, you know, I feel like I've been waiting. And it felt like a waiting game for me, because I wanted to connect a long time ago, and it was just never the right, time is everything, it was just never the right time, obviously. So hopefully this does something. And if I do get any feedback or anything in regards to Amber's case, or any of my other cases, but Amber's case, or I get something, or it helps push something forward, obviously I'm going to do update videos. Now let's just say, for example, this guy Hyso is the guy that they find. I will absolutely be discussing it, because I obviously know what he looks like and everything. So my field's very complex, as people know. It's parapsychology is incredibly complex, and paranormal investigations, paranormal science is a very complex field. So why I work on cold cases, why I work on these sort of things, because it's my data, and data is everything, and this is how I try and gather proof, so we know that there's something to do with interconnective energies. So, and I work with energy. So, but yeah, like I say, if I do get any updates on any of my cases, absolutely, I will update you guys and gals. But I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that this something in here helps something push it forward and goes to that next step. Other than that, I will see you all again very, very soon for another investigation.